How's it going, everyone? Dylan here from All You Can Board, and today I have a different kind of video that might be a little bit controversial, but I'm hoping not too controversial because I'm trying to do this in a way that doesn't invoke a lot of, argument or controversy or anything. And because this is a brand new series, something that we, are going to be doing ongoing on the channel every so often whenever we encounter a game that we think fits the mold to talk about in this way. And it's going to be called something to do with unpopular opinions in board gaming or something. I don't even know what I'm going to call it, but it's going to be, that's what it has to do with. I'll figure out some title when I'm putting this on YouTube. You'll already know what it is by the time you're watching this. But basically what it is we're going to look at games that rank either very highly on the Board Game Geek top board game list or rank unusually low in our opinion. And we're going to talk about our different opinion, our unpopular opinion. So basically we could take a game that is, not, I don't want to say universally loved because it's not as though the Board Game Geek list is the be all end all and the final say, but we're going to take games that are either, widely loved and say why we don't personally like them, or games that, are widely panned or widely, not well known, for instance, and why we love them so much. So we're going to try to do this ongoing on the channel as we find games that we seem to have different opinions on. And the first one that I wanted to do, because I've had this opinion for a while and I've wanted to do a video to talk about it, is of course, as you can see here, Tainted Grail. So Tainted Grail is going to be the first one we talk about. I've kind of given you the overview of what the series is going to be, but before I dive into this, the other thing I want to mention is that in doing this, obviously this is gonna, I'm 100% certain that there are people out there that absolutely love Tainted Grail and are gonna disagree with me. My hope is that in doing these videos is that we can have some fun discussion in the comments about why you like a game that I don't, or why I don't like a game you do, or vice versa, without it ever getting into like arguments or someone being mad because I have a different opinion. The world is full of different opinions when it comes to entertainment, especially like video games and books and movies and TV shows. It's never there's never an instance where something comes out and it's just, universally loved. Even some of the most widely loved shows out there, the Seinfelds and the Friends, for instance, the movies, the Shawshank Redemption, things like that. I know people who don't like them, and that's okay. I feel like no one should be criticized for their opinion when it comes to things like this, because everyone has different tastes. Everyone has different things that they enjoy and don't enjoy. And so what I'm kind of hoping, this is a long-winded way of saying that what I'm hoping with this series is that nothing ever spirals out of this series where it's going to be, argumentative or combative, or people are going to be angry about, a game that they love being talked about in a way of here's the flaws, because many of the games I love have flaws, and many of the games I love other people hate, and that is totally fine. I think that's like the most interesting thing about entertainment products in general, is that we can have such different opinions and we can talk about them. So I'm hoping that that's what this allows for. I don't want people to be arguing in the comments or like really vocally angry that they're have a different opinion than me, or other people that may agree with me, or whatever the case may be. Let's just have some fun with this. I respect the hell out of this game, and I'm putting it on this list because I think it's an interesting one to talk about. So all that disclaimer out of the way, let's dive in. I'm going to start talking about Tainted Grail. And I think the very first place to start, the best place to start, is I'm going to tell you the things that I actually like about Tainted Grail, because there's actually a ton of stuff I really like about Tainted Grail. And I think it's important in the context of what I want to get at with this to understand that before I jump into the reasons that I'm putting this as my unpopular opinion as a game that I don't like that many people do. So tons to like here, like I said. First of all, the story and the lore I find to be super, super engaging. The way that every character gets their own starting letter that you basically get to read, that gives you a little bit of your backstory and sort of why you're setting out the way that you are. And the fact that this world is it's like Arthurian legend, but it's really a dark version of it. And there's a lot of like mystique and mystery and stuff going on. Like, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty and the details, because I feel like if you're going to jump into this game and try it, the fresher you go in, the better. So I really don't want to spoil anything for anyone to really touch into anything. So I'm only really giving you the bare bones overview here, but it's just really, really engaging. And as you uncover parts of the world, and learn more of the lore and more of the story and what's going on with the characters and everything like that, I found that was unbelievably satisfying. That's probably my favorite part of Tainted Grail, and campaign games in general. That's something that's usually important to me. There's a couple like key pillars I would say in campaign games, and as long as like 2 of 3, or if you're lucky all 3 are really, really solid, then you makes for a really good campaign game. One of those for sure is the story, and I think Tainted Grail nails that. I really, really enjoyed it. It's not going to be for everyone. It has a bit of a it's dark in the sense of like a Dark Souls type vibe. Like, Dark Souls is not the same type of story. It's not Arthurian legend. If you're not familiar, Dark Souls is a video game, a very difficult one. I'll be making some comparisons to in this. But it's it's got that same sort of like dark, over like brooding sense to the story and to the lore and to everything going on. If you're not a fan of that, if you don't like things to be that dark and that gritty, like there's some imagery and some stuff that's talked about that is not going to be pleasant for everyone to read. I don't think it ever gets too too dark, at least we didn't for me, but for some it may. But as long as that's not something that, is a big sticking point for you, I personally think the story and the lore is fantastic in Tainted Grail. The exploration, this kind of ties into that, being able to traverse this land. You get a map to start, and you get to traverse the land, kind of following the guideline that this map is laid out for you. But the map is not 100% accurate, because maps, back in this type of day wouldn't be. So it's more of a guideline, and you're exploring different areas, getting to flip them over and read, the information of the area and all the options you have. Out of those options, you can choose multiple paths. Like, you really, really feel like you're exploring. And in a game like this, and in campaign games in general, that's one of the main things that draws me, is I like to explore and unlock things and find out more and feel like you're slowly building the building, like you're placing the building blocks of the world as you go. And because of the way that Tainted Grail functions with these menhir, which are basically these statues that you have to light, and when you light a statue, all the areas around it are now accessible to you. So you really have to explore and with purpose to basically unlock more. You can't just decide, I'm going to just go over to this corner. There's things you have to do to unlock that. You have to make it part of your mission. It's important to like really focus on where you want to go and things like that. But it's just really satisfying. The exploration is something I really, really loved about Tainted Grail, and it was the thing I was most excited to come back to it for, to say, what other areas have we not explored? We haven't gone to this corner of the map. I loved it. I think that it was done really, really well. The timed and interesting events, again, this is something I'm not going to touch on too much because I don't want to spoil anything, but there are events that you'll come across that are, there's some that are character specific. If you have a certain character there and you're playing them thematically, or, leveling them up according to like the way that they've been built in their backstory, you may have more success in certain areas based on having that character present. There's timed events in the sense that like you might go to an area and uncover something, and now you have a certain amount of days to carry out that new like side mission or that quest before that runs out. Now that is that one character's focus. Everyone else may be doing other things, and this person has a very narrow focus. I have to accomplish this in X amount of time, and other people might come in to help, and it might help everyone if that conclusion is reached. Very, very cool. All those things are very, very neat, and I like that it adds to the exploration when you start uncovering things like that. I mentioned the character specific triggers, the rewards for playing your character thematically. I know I touched on that briefly, but I just want to stress, like, it's really, really interesting to read the backstory of your character, see which stats you start with, and then sort of decide, I'm going to embody this character and the decisions that he or she would make, and be rewarded for that. And there's times where I made decisions saying, well, based on my character's stats and based on, what I know about my character, he would probably make this decision. And I was rewarded for doing that, as if I almost like found the solution to a puzzle in a way. And that was really cool. And again, anything that makes you feel rewarded just makes you want to keep coming back to it. So that was great as well. And tons of character progression options. I would say the character progression is not perfect in this game by any means. In fact, there's many ways in which it falls much short, but there's tons of options, and you don't have to build your character in the way that it's sort of like, I don't want to say destined just to go in the beginning, but like you're nudged in a certain direction with a character based on the stats you start with and things like that. You don't have to follow that. You can choose the ability cards you start adding to your character as you go, which stats you level and when, which cards you add to your diplomacy deck and your combat deck. There's a lot of options. So if you like the idea of progressing your character, seeing it build and kind of customizing it so that your version of this character is slightly different than someone else's, you'll still feel that, and it is really satisfying. So like I said, that's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to like in this game. That's the one I want to stress a lot, is that this isn't a video of me saying, hey, I hate Tainted Grail, I'm going to tell you why. I would say that more than anything, I'm just disappointed by Tainted Grail. So now let's jump into the reasons that I'm doing Tainted Grail is the first one in this series. So disappointment is the biggest thing for me, because for so many of these positives, I find that there are mechanics and systems in Tainted Grail that deliberately make it hard to enjoy the things that Tainted Grail does so well. And that is what I find so frustrating, is that it's like the game is deciding at times it is going to try to be less fun. And one of the main examples I'm going to use here, and I know this has been talked about in comments of different forms all over, and it seems it's a divisive topic because there's people on both sides, is when it comes to the grindiness and the having to light menhirs and all the resources you need to gather to do that. So what else? say about that without getting too much into the details of it is that basically, like I said, you're lighting these menhirs, and the menhirs are going to allow you to explore more terrain around them. But the menhirs do not stay lit. So depending on how many players you're playing with, there's basically a timer that starts, and after X amount of days in game, those menhirs will basically go out, and you'll remove it from the map, and everything that's surrounding that menhir that is not lit, like touching another lit menhir, is basically not accessible anymore. Those areas of the map come off, and you have to get them back, you're gonna have to relight a menhir to be able to explore those areas again. So you really, if you're not done checking out certain areas, if you're not done with exploring certain ones, or accomplishing what you need, you're constantly having to worry and think about the menhirs when they're running out and lighting them again. And if it was just as simple as going there and using an action, or using multiple actions to be able to do it, that would be one thing. But there's a lot of resources to gather, and in the beginning stages of the game, the earlier stages, I would say, in the first several chapters, it can take a lot of resource gathering and going out of your way to gather the right resources to light menhirs. So you basically stop doing the story, you stop exploring, and you stop doing the things that are, for me anyways, are really drawing me into the world, and the things that I was playing and wanting to do. You stop doing all that to start grinding resources to basically allow you to do those things you want to do, which I understand that the game obviously was supposed to be this, very grim world. It thematically, it fits the world that you're constantly struggling, constantly grinding. So from a thematic standpoint, it nails that. But the problem is that when you sacrifice enjoyment, fun, for thematics in a board game where you're often gathering multiple people together, and if you're adults, if you're in your 30s, sometimes it can be hard to gather people together. You might have you doing a full group of 4, and you can meet once a month. And if you meet once a month because you really want to just learn more about the story, and I want to explore this corner of the map that we haven't been at yet, and all of a sudden you're spending half an hour or 45 minutes doing multiple of everyone's turns, just gathering resources so you can keep this menhir lit. It just seems like it's preventing you from doing the things that you sat down at the table to do in the first place. And if that's not fun, and there's this barrier to get to the fun stuff, I have to wonder why it's even there. Would the game have lost anything besides some thematics with the grimness of the world if the menhirs stayed permanently lit? And I know that there's other things in the mechanics that's not as simple as just saying that, but just imagine for a second that the menhirs stay permanently lit. When you light one, the world just continues to expand and open up for you, and you just constantly can explore at your heart's content or whatever. There can still be, the world can still be dangerous and grim and difficult based on the encounters, based on the exploration, the results of the exploration. But why do we need to be grinding constantly in a way that prevents us from doing the most interesting things about the game? That is what gets me the most about Tainted Grail, is that it just seems like it's intentionally making it difficult to experience the most fun parts of it. And for sure, you could house rule different things to make that the case. There is, it's either called an easy mode or a story mode or something that's in the rulebook saying, hey, you can make this slightly easier by the menhirs staying lit longer. But it just seems weird that the normal version of the game is that focused on, we want you to be grinding and barely able to do the fun things. That to me is bizarre and not something I enjoyed about Tainted Grail, and pretty much the number one reason that I had such a hard time coming back to Tainted Grail. I've heard people make comparisons to things like Dark Souls, the video game I mentioned earlier, because Dark Souls is a game that is excruciatingly hard at times. And I remember playing that game, playing Dark Souls 2, and at times thinking, this is so infuriatingly difficult. Why am I even playing? But the thing that Dark Souls has that Tainted Grail doesn't in that regard is that Dark Souls does have this moment where you accomplish what you set out to do, and you feel the sense of reward and accomplishment. Usually you unlock a shortcut that now makes it so you can skip a bunch of areas that you were struggling through, so you don't have to do that anymore. So you've made your life easier, you've made exploring the world easier. There is a tangible reward that makes you feel like you've taken a step forward and you never have to take a step back. And you're playing by yourself. In Tainted Grail, you're playing with 4 people that have all dedicated their time to, or you and 3 other people if you're playing with a full group. You don't have to play with a full group, but usually that's why I like to experience campaign games, because I like to bring in as many people as I can, make a night out of it. So that's how I enjoy them. So if you're playing with 4 players that way, you've all dedicated your time, so you've set aside time for this. You may only have 3 hours to do that. As soon as you start having to struggle and hit the wall over and over and over again, it's a little bit different than when you're playing by yourself. And more so than that, there isn't that tangible reward in the same way. Yes, you are rewarded with different, with now more areas of the map or more resources when you get through certain, are gathering all this stuff in the grinding phase, but you don't. It would be the same as Dark Souls if when you lit a Menhir and it stayed lit, that would feel like the same reward. So you're like, hey, we fought and we fought and we fought to get this Menhir lit, to open up this corner of the map, and we did, and now it's open to us, and now we can explore, we can check out the story and everything. But yet you always feel the anxiety of that Menhir is going to go out so we can explore for this day, but then we're going to have to start gathering the resources for when it goes out so we can't explore anymore. And you're just like, well, I want to explore. That's what I want to do, and the game is telling me you can't. And that, to me, is the breakdown. If the game has something that is super fun and I say, I want to do it, and the game says, well, you can't right now because you got to do this other thing that's less fun, and it does that multiple times, that to me is the breakdown. That's where I don't agree with that design choice. And I think that, it's just unfortunate because there is so much exciting stuff that I'm just wanting to experience more often, and I can't. Okay, and I mentioned combat and diplomacy events. And the first thing I want to point out is that I actually think that the combat system and the diplomacy system is super unique in Tainted Grail. It's very easy for campaign games to sort of see what's already been done by things like Dungeons and Dragons or Gloomhaven and different campaign games out there, and just find a variation on that, whether it's using dice, whether it's using cards. I found that Tainted Grails was very, very different. I hadn't played anything quite like that. The way it does combat in another game. You're laying out sort of this like tableau of cards that's in a sequence, and you're matching up symbols, and abilities will come into play with adding cubes to cards. Depending on how many cubes, which is damage, is added to the monster you're fighting, it'll trigger different abilities that the monster now reacts with. So you're having to say, I could do 3 damage, but that means that on their turn, this is the ability that's going to trigger. If I only do 2 damage, it actually only triggers this ability. So there's this puzzle element that at times you can find yourself just in thought trying to think things out. But I did find it engaging, I did find it interesting, and I did find it fun. The problem that I have with combat and diplomacy is that sometimes the combat is this like really thinky puzzle, and it is really time consuming, and it's fun for the person who's engaged in combat, but sometimes only one person at the table is engaged in combat, which means the other 3 people on that person's turn are watching the combat unfold. And not to say it can't be interesting. Early on in the early chapters, watching other people's combat was great, and because we're going to benefit by that player getting more resources as well. So it was fun. As you get later into the game and everyone's, again, dedicating time, wanting to play and everything, wanting to have their turn, someone having a big session of combat and everyone else just having to be stuck around watching, loses its luster a little bit, as how I would put it. And you can for sure have combat where you have multiple people engaged, but there are going to be several instances where there's people at the table not engaged in combat, and you're going to have them, using it as a bathroom break or grabbing some food or whatever. And it feels like almost this like disconnect in the game. Suddenly everything that we were all coordinating and collaborating and talking, and suddenly all of a sudden one person's doing something, the other 3 are checking their phones and waiting for this person to finish their combat. So that was the one problem, and I don't even know that there's a way to solve that. I just think based on how combat was done here, that is just something that's going to happen. And obviously every campaign game, every board game, someone else's turn is going on and you're watching. I just found that this is a more extreme example because it lasts pretty long, or can last pretty long, and that can slow things down, bog down the session a little bit. And there are instances in combat where, as you unlock new cards and basically as you start customizing your deck, you can have certain cards that hey, if I draw these 2 cards in this order, if I just happen to draw these cards, it's going to really make combat go a lot better, or I'm going to, it's harder for me to lose, or I never lose if I draw this card. And you can start just like really, the session can start to become about, when I get into combat, I just want to keep getting through my deck until I get the cards I need to win. And so it becomes this thing where it's like, you're powerful. These cards are powerful enough that you just want to draw them to win the combat session, and you're just basically, whether it's through mulligans, whether it's through using cards just for the sake of using them to be able to draw new cards, or just playing cards that specifically allow you to get through your deck and thin it out to get the cards you need. You're basically just playing for these specific cards, and when you draw them, it's like, oh, I drew that, I win now. And that's exciting the first time it's the first time you have a brand new card, and less exciting every subsequent time. So I still really like the combat. I still really like the diplomacy events. I just found that, again, those are the kind of the minor issues that really bog it down. So those are really the main issues. And I know that it's like, hey, those only sound like it's like you have these couple issues or these 3 issues or whatever the case may be. The problem is it all comes back to the fun that I'm having playing Tainted Grail. A campaign game is different than sitting down to play a single session of a board game. I could have someone over to play a session of Lost Ruins of Arnak, and someone could have a really bad game. They just, do bad deck build, and they just have a really bad playing session. And you can still have fun with Lost Ruins of Arnak. And it's not going to take you, you're not dedicating. It's not like this is our once a month meeting for it or whatever the case may be. It might have been, this is the game we played this time. We're going to play a different game next time. Or maybe we're playing a couple games that night. Generally, for us, whenever I've hosted campaign sessions for Gloomhaven, for Tainted Grail, for any of the games in the future I'm going to play, Pandemic Legacy, it's a dedicated thing. We are getting together to play this game. We have set aside at least 3 hours. Maybe it's out on a weekend where we have a longer period of time. We had to work everyone's schedule together to get everyone together. We're looking to have fun. Like that to me, I want to have fun. I want to collaborate. I want to talk with people. I want to uncover story. I want to feel like I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm doing it with a tabletop board game experience and with the uniqueness that brings to it. And there's just too many barriers for me in Tainted Grail to get me to that level of satisfaction. I would sit down for a session with Gloomhaven, and Gloomhaven has its own issues with story and narrative. But again, those pillars I talked about, combat and collaboration and, working together in a dungeon diving game, Gloomhaven has a very, very strong pillar in that entire setup. And in that regard, I just had so much fun playing Gloomhaven. We would get together, and even when we lost a scenario 2 times, and we had to try the same scenario 3 times to finally beat it, it just felt fulfilling. It felt like we were having fun, collaborating, and learning, and it was just a really, really good experience. And I found that there was moments like that, like, little brief moments in Tainted Grail where I was like, this is exactly why we're getting together. This was amazing. Oh, what you just pulled off was so good, or what you just uncovered is amazing. Like, there's those moments, but they're few and far between, or they're not as often as I think that they should be. And really, if there's any point in playing a campaign game where it just starts to drag for long periods of time, and you're thinking, well, this is getting kind of boring, like, I think you have that's a problem that's worth discussing. And I wonder how, from a thematic standpoint, like I said, I understand why there's this grindiness and why it's, this really wanting to make you feel like you're just like constantly against the odds. But if someone had to have realized, hey, that's going to make it very hard to enjoy certain parts of these mechanics, or people are going to want to go experience our story and they're going to have to pause doing that to go grind this out. And to me, that just doesn't sound fun. And you can make comparisons to like RPG games where you have to grind levels to beat a boss. Some people love that, and that's why, I'm not saying that this is a universal complaint. Like, this is just an issue for me. But again, with what is sometimes demanded of a guy in his 30s, wanting to get friends together to play a campaign game, the sessions just didn't quite hit the mark for me in what I would hope that they would. And that's just a really important thing for me. So that is why it's on this list. And the reason, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but I think Tainted Grail is somewhere, it's in the top 100 on Board Game Geek. It's like in the 70s or 60s. I'll put it up on the screen what it's currently at. I haven't looked specifically at it. I should have looked before I started this video. But it's pretty high up, and it's astonishing to me that it's that high up, because I understand tons of people like it, but to think that when I think that this is in the top 100 board games of all time on that list, that boggles my mind, because it's so nor even near. I haven't played, obviously there's way more games on BGG than how many I've played, but if I had played like 500 games, right, and was making a list, like, I can guarantee you Tainted Grail is not in the top 100. So the fact that out of all the thousands of games that are on there, that universally that's where it's been placed, it's just surprising to me. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's, again, if maybe that there's that many people, I might just be in the minority with it not hitting me in the right ways, and the majority love the way you have to fight to light these menhirs and then explore the map. Like, I've really enjoyed that, and I think that's great if you have. And if please, if that's the case, if you're like, everything you said you don't like is the reason I play Tainted Grail, tell me in the comments, because I completely respect that, and those are the kind of discussions I'd love to have, because I love to hear what it is about those things that give you the opposite effect that it gives me. So please let me know in the comments. Don't think I'm attacking your opinion on the game. I'm telling you what mine is, and I am absolutely interested to hear why you have a different one, or why you agree with me, or why you like it or don't like it for completely different reasons. Let me know. The very last thing I'm going to touch on is there is the 2 expansions here. I did play through the last night, I think is the one I played. Last night solo, to see how much different a solo experience was with Tainted Grail compared to 4 players, whether it was better or worse. I thought it was actually, it was a little bit better. I guess not having everyone else at the table and no one having to, less stoppage, no one watching each other's combat, and, just feeling like you're moving a little bit quicker, at a quicker pace, even when you're having to do the grinding. There's less grindiness in last night in terms of the Miniers. I won't, again, spoil everything, but there's a little bit of a new system with it. Way less grindiness. You have way more opportunity for exploration. So it does correct some things. I wonder if that was because they realized that was an issue or whether that was the intent from the beginning. But whatever the case may be, it is. I thought it was actually an improvement. Maybe not from a story perspective. I did like the original lore and story of the first one, but from a mechanics and gameplay perspective, I actually thought that the last night was an improvement. I haven't played Age of Legends yet, again, because not being a huge fan of Tainted Grail, it's just not on my top priority list when I have so many games that I'm getting to. But that being said, those are all my thoughts on it. Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear why you agree, disagree. Like, let's have a good discussion. Again, like I said at the beginning, I'll stress, this is not about, getting into arguments, getting into big, name calling matches or anything. I know people sometimes have very strong opinions on what they like and dislike, but I think you can have strong opinions and thoughts and still respect everyone else's. And that's what I'm hoping we can get out of this, because I respect everyone who loves Tainted Grail. I just wanted to do this series because I think it opens up really cool possibilities for healthy discussion and debate and everything in the comments, or just about different games in general. Not everything has to be liked by everyone or disliked by everyone, and sometimes that just for me, that's just the most interesting discussions to have. Some of the most fun conversations I've had with Carlo is even just ones where we're poking fun at the fact that, like, I think Feast for Odin is a better game than Agricola or something like that. Like, those are the type of things that I think we can have fun even when we disagree. So even though I don't like Tainted Grail and it's a game that I don't necessarily want to come back to, if you do love it and you want them to make sequels and you want to keep playing with people, let me know about it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. We can talk about it, and it'd be super, super cool to hear about those stories. So thank you so much for watching. If you don't want to miss any of our content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You get notifications whenever we post a new video. Otherwise, once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.